who
So
was
what did you say? We'll fight a
1,000-year war.
1,000 years.
Yeah, we'll fight a 1,000-year war. I'm glad
Sure.
they had that much confidence in us also that they'll have to fight us for
Right.
1,000 years to win.
Especially after being broken down in 24 years.
Yeah, and no, and that jump really went from one Muslim is equal to 10 Hindus to we'll have to fight with you for 1,000 years to win. So So another interesting thing that happened, and I just checked it online, was it happened in January of 1965, and the war was in between April and September of 1965. So another interesting thing that happened was that he, to legitimize himself, sort of, he held Ayub Khan held this sort of rigged, basically, election for president. He was president, so it was a presidential election that he held, and the person standing up against him in the election was guess who? Muhammad Ali Jinnah's sister.
Oh.
Yeah, so Fatima Jinnah, and she had a
Okay.
wide support base actually, and it was widely felt that she's going to win the elections. But
1 second. So they had a prime ministerial system until then.
yeah, once he took over, it became a presidential system, sort of like how Musharraf did. He was president of Pakistan, right? After he overthrew Nawaz Sharif. So similarly.
Right.
So they've shifted between this presidential and prime ministerial system.
Because a dictator needs to be a president.
Yeah, exactly.
Like as the supreme leader of the nation.
Exactly. So 4 times they've changed this system. But
okay, anyway, so yeah.
So that election was widely felt. I mean, Fatima Jinnah had wide amounts of support, and people felt that she was going to win. And she lost because it was a rigged election. And so Ayub Khan, faced a lot of flack for it. And I guess that was also one of the reasons why the 65 war was started, to get this sort of positive output and make people forget about, this small blemish in otherwise the great prosperous decade. And and that loss was taken really personally by a lot of people, because Fatima Jinnah is epitomized as the mother of the nation, actually, Madre Watan. And she was actually very popular in East Pakistan also. Guess who was campaigning for her in East Pakistan? Mujibur Rahman, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, who was the main proponent of the Bangladesh movement in East Pakistan. So they were really close. So, a lot of people wonder if she'd won that election, maybe Pakistan would have been a completely different country. And maybe that whole episode with East Pakistan wouldn't have gone the way it did. But of course, it couldn't have happened any other way because it was a rigged election. So Ayub Khan won that election. He became president. But after the war, again, opinions about him were really turning negative, especially after Tashkent Agreement, where Shastriji went and Shastriji died and all of that. But the sort of agreement and ceasefire, you can't hide the fact from people that you didn't capture Kashmir. So the ceasefire sort of angered a lot of people who felt that they were in a position of power to, grab more land or something like that. Or they'd been told that they had more territory than India did, which they didn't. So a lot of people felt, that something they had been wronged and stuff like that. And by that time, that whole charm of the 60s had sort of started waning with Ayub Khan. The economy wasn't doing that great after a while because, how long can you just take a dole and keep, spending it? So
Hmm.
he became an ineffectual leader with time, and basically in the late 60s, which was around 68, 69, uh, he was sort of removed, and another dictator came in, who was General Yahya Khan, another military dictator, replaced him sort of in a bloodless coup. It can't really be called a coup, but he was basically asked to um, peacefully sort of leave, and Yahya Khan, who was the head of the army, sort of took over peacefully. What
Hmm.
happened during this time was the Bangladeshi movement started taking up steam in East Pakistan. So
Hmm.
to remind again everyone that Pakistan was basically in two major pieces before 1971. It was West Pakistan, which is today's Pakistan, and East Pakistan, which is Bangladesh today. And
Hmm.
this was because, as you know, all the princely states were given the opportunity to choose between India, Pakistan, and independence. And the
Hmm.
East Bengal Assembly voted in favor of being in a part of Pakistan. So essentially, they, you know, uh,
So why didn't we have a war with them the way we did with Hyderabad or Junagadh?
because East Bengal was a majority Muslim population, and it did overwhelmingly vote to join Pakistan. But the thing with Hyderabad was it was an
But
overwhelmingly Hindu population and a Muslim king.
oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Muslim Nizam, and it was an entirely
Ah,
landlocked
okay.
country. So you know, eh,
But then,
that was quite an
hmm.
aberration. While Bangladesh or East Pakistan at that time
Hmm.
had a lot of prominent Muslim League leaders, and
Hmm.
like Muhammad Ali Bogra and I forget the name, Hussain Surawardi. These guys were prominent leaders of the Muslim League or its affiliates, and they were
Right.
politicians. So it was a political movement, a lot more of a political movement in East Bengal as compared to
Right.
majorly a monarchy which just did not want to give up its powers, and you know, uh,
Right.
and it was like it was bang in like South India, surrounded by like the rest of India. So much different than, you know. I know East Bengal is also. I mean, it's now that a lot of people look at it, it does seem like a huge joke that East Pakistan and West Pakistan were like these two satellite states and like countries. But yeah, at that time
Hmm.
we allowed this kind of stupidity, so it happened.
Right.
And basically, actually, what had happened was you'd be surprised to know this that I'll put this map definitely up on the screen. Is that they actually the one of the original maps drawn by a lot of the ideologues for Pakistan had actually 17 of these pockets inside India that would be these Muslim
Hmm.
dominated countries.
Hmm.
So like the whole of
Hmm.
Assam and Bengal would be this place called Bangistan, and there would be like parts of
Isn't that a film?
that's Bangistan. But oh yeah, that's actually the same spelling here. That's that's actually true. And in
Hmm.
the future, if that place had a lot of terrorists, I mean that would have been hilarious. That name would have just been like just like fit right Bangistan. But it was Bangistan, and it essentially sounds like
Okay.
basically a name that a Punjabi would keep for a place that is Bengal, like oh Bangistan, Bengal, Bengali, so that sort of a thing.
Hmm.
And like basically they had a lot of places. There would be a lot of Haryana, a lot of Bihar, uh,
Hmm.
a lot of the border regions of Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, and Gujarat. So all these places would be like sort of pockets, and there were basically two kinds of people when Pakistan was being partitioned. And I'm not talking about Jinnah and all, but the religious sort of ideologues. There were two kinds of people. A lot of them felt that these pockets should be created. We should have our separate country, and then slowly we will, when we are strong, we will come and conquer the rest of India, and basically
Hmm.
make Ghazwa Hind and a country ruled by Muslims. A lot of other people felt that we should remain in India and convert these people from inside, like all these schools that are like basically like this is a bit controversial, but it's true. A lot of those Deobandi and Bareilly, which are these places in UP from Bareilly and Deoband. These schools of thought actually argued at that time that we should remain here, convert people, and Ghazwa-i-Hind will happen from the inside, basically. So that
And they did stay back, right?
they did stay back. So that's why I'm saying it's so controversial because they are schools of thought that are in India right now.
Yeah.
So Deobandi is known
Right.
for its Saudi connections and radicalism. But
Right.
yeah, so there were these kinds of people as well.
And what does Ghazwa in literally translate to?
Ghazwa-i-Hind is sort of, as far as my understanding is, it's a hadith. Now, a hadith is not part of the Quran. It's something that some people say was said by the Prophet Muhammad other than the Quran, and some people say that it's just hearsay or it's been written by someone else. But one of these hadith basically has this thought, this ideology of Ghazwa-i-Hind, which basically means that, if I'm not wrong, like how Muhammad Ghaznavi came into India, and him and bin Qasim and all these people were the first conquerors, right? So basically, just like that, a Muslim army will come and basically overtake all of India and make it into a Muslim nation.
But then it couldn't have been by Prophet Muhammad, right? Because Muhammad Ghaznavi came in which year? Much later, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not too clear on this, but it's something, basically, it's something like that. It's one of those.
Because I think everybody has now heard the term in Sacred Games too.
Oh yeah, Sacred Games too, by the way. That show is just basically, it took like a lot of like trivia from my brain, it felt like, and just like splattered onto the script because I saw a lot of them diving into a lot of history and philosophy that is related with the two countries. So I mean, I quite felt like the words were coming out of my own mouth. Very interesting, and we'll talk about a lot of things that were mentioned in it as well later. They will come up for those people who've seen Sacred Games. So yeah, basically what we were discussing was that there was all these messy parts that they wanted to make, and guess who else was like in on this whole idea of dividing India into these 17, 18 like different pockets and small countries with the Muslim League and all these people. Guess who? The communists.
Of course.
They had a similar idea. They didn't feel. I mean, obviously they don't. From what I'm given to understand, from what I understand, communism trumps all ideology for them, right? So it was sort of like that. India is made up of a bunch of small countries, and we'll take them because it'll be much easier to, sort of bring revolutions inside those countries. Communist nations, make a bunch of communist nations, and that's actually why to the point that we were talking about earlier, they actually sent a lot of people from their cadres to Pakistan when Pakistan was being created to make the presence of the Communist Party, in Pakistan.
That's such a weird order to get. Like, go change your country.
I'll tell you one of the most interesting ones, and this has recent relevance. A guy recently died in Pakistan, who was a communist ideologue, and his name was B.M. Kutti.
What?
B.M. Kutti was a Keralite communist who was told by the party to go to Pakistan to keep the communist movement alive in Pakistan. So he actually abandoned India and he left in after partition, and spent a lot of time in Karachi and Balochistan. And he was actually one of the right hand man of one of the Baloch leaders, Bizenjo, something Bizenjo. I don't remember his full name.
I think that's how Keralites started going to Muslim countries too.
Not, yeah. But,
That's really surprising. Somebody
Yeah.
called B.M. Kutti being there in Pakistan.
Exactly. So, and he just passed away. I think he's written a book also that was published in 2011, his autobiography. I think that would be a very
So
interesting.
he didn't convert to Muslim.
No,
because
he's
he's
a communist, right? He's technically an atheist.
Wow, how did he survive?
Uh,
So I mean, you're saying that he was like he's a really old man who went to Pakistan in '47.
Yeah, he just passed away.
Really, he didn't succeed.
Yeah, obviously he did. I mean, that
I like how they're playing games with each other. Pakistanis are thinking they'll convert all of India
Yeah.
to Pakistan. or an Islamic state. And the communists are saying we'll let them do that and then convert them into
No,
communists.
I don't think they meant let them do that. They essentially
Or
thought,
rather, like let them proceed with the initial part of their plan, which is to have a lot of small countries,
no,
right?
you're wrong. I didn't mean that communists were in favor of Pakistan getting made, like these different Pakistans getting made.
No, in terms of those small
Yeah,
pockets
they thought those
existing.
pockets, they meant ethnic pockets. So like Gujarat is a
Okay.
separate country, Bihar is a separate country, all these things. Not on
Oh, so they didn't want these
no,
states to
not on
unite together.
no, yeah, not on religious lines. But when it happened on religious lines, when Pakistan was created on religious
Hmm.
lines, they still decided that they felt basically that all communists will come to India since it's going to be a secular country and Pakistan is going to be an Islamic country. So the communist movement will die there, which is why they dedicatedly sent out cadres to go and keep the communist movement alive in Pakistan.
Hmm.
So
Wow.
yeah, yeah, basically that happened. But coming back to East Pakistan. So
Hmm.
East Pakistan was never really, it could never really, be one really in that sense with Pakistan, even though the population was almost half of the entire population of Pakistan. Bangladesh is very, very
Hmm.
populated. So, but could never become really one country. First of all, because the official language that was picked up by West Pakistan was, I mean, the whole of Pakistan was Urdu. And,
Hmm.
you can maybe coerce like Punjabis and Sindhis and all these people into speaking Urdu. You can't
Hmm.
convince Bengalis to give up Bengali and pick up Urdu because Bengali is very, very inherent, very, very, tightly woven with their identity, the cultural
Hmm.
identity. So
Yeah.
these people were not ready to give up Bengali. Even though, even they'd also, even in fact, I remember reading, they'd even booed Jinnah, Muhammad Ali Jinnah once when he had visited East Pakistan because he asked them to adopt Urdu and they did
They
not.
booed him.
They booed him off the stage because they didn't. They wanted to remain like they wanted Bengali to remain basically the main language of the state and not get overtaken by Urdu. They wanted two official languages, and obviously Jinnah and the Muslim League, and especially after Jinnah died, these people did not want to cede any sort of space. So they never would have agreed to this pact.
Hmm.
Now, all of it came to a climax when there were elections in 1970, parliamentary elections now, under General
Hmm.
Yahya Khan after Ayub Khan had left. Now,
Hmm.
what happened? 1970 elections happened. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, who was the leader of the Awami League, which was the biggest party in East Pakistan, he won like, I'm sorry if someone's hearing very, very loud bangs on this podcast because I think the Ganpati celebrations are going on in full force around me. So you might be hearing some crackers bursting and all
Hmm.
of that. But basically, uh, when those 1970 elections happened, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman won, I think, 98% of the vote in East Pakistan.
What?
Yeah. So obviously, what anyone won in West Pakistan was irrelevant because this would end up being the majority, right? They would end up winning the majority of the seats, and that's what
Hmm.
happened. But these guys were not ready to have a Bengali, be the prime minister of all of Pakistan. Neither Yahya Khan nor the prominent political leader at that time, who was Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. So what they did was they called the elections null. They imprisoned him, and they,
On the basis of what?
on the basis that something he's anti-national, he's friend of India, whatever. You don't need much to cook up stories back then.
I like how Pakistanis can just like do whatever they want
Yeah,
without any solid logic in there. Like
yeah,
nobody's questioning why the entire election has been, deemed null and void
yeah. It doesn't.
after the result.
Yeah, just need to cast aspersions on the political leader, and you've got yourself a
Hmm.
coup.
Okay. So they
So,
what put him in jail
yeah, they put him under house arrest, I think, and
house arrest.
yeah, I'm not too sure. Then I think he went to they. into exile in London or something like that. I'm not 100% sure on that. But basically, these kind of things happened, and they had martial law in Bengal, and Bengalis who tried to protest started getting killed left, right, and center. And basically, a lot of them started coming into India. India started facing the brunt of it. And long story short, we trained those people who were coming into our country. We sent them back as the Mukti Bahini, which was the guerrilla force. We sent our, we waited and waited for, Pakistan to get frustrated. Then Pakistan attacked us on 3rd December. That is when war was declared. And
On the basis of what?
that India is fueling insurgency in Pakistan. So we are
And
going
what was
to,
our motivation for like preparing the Mukti Bahini?
because these people were coming into our place, we were facing the brunt. So Indira Gandhi basically decided that nothing doing, we have to liberate East Pakistan. We have to make it Bangladesh, because then these people are not going to stop. So what we are going to take refugees? Some 4 or 5 million refugees came in a matter of like months. So how are we going to manage? Why are we facing the brunt of it? So they thought that we have to go inside, we have to clear this whole place, and we'll talk sometime in detail into how the 71 war happened and the role Field Marshal Manekshaw played in it. But basically, we sent the Mukti Bahini in, and we waited. We had our time, and eventually they decided to attack us. They attacked us on the western front, not even on the eastern front. So Pakistani army attacked us on the western front to, split our forces. So then war was declared on the 3rd of December, and as goes history.
So what we did to them in 65, they tried to do to us in 71.
Sort of, yeah, in a way.
Okay.
Yeah, they opened a second plant.
Yeah.
But, and so essentially what happened was that in those 13 days, as I mean, I think most people know, is we utterly destroyed them, and they had to surrender, and Bangladesh was created. And it was at that point sort of when the two nation theory really fell apart, because the two nation theory was all about that India and Pakistan are, India is essentially two nations because of Hindus and Muslims, and they are two historical separate nations. But the nation that they created could not even last 25 years. It lasted 24 years. It couldn't even last quarter of a century, and it lasted only for 24 years, and half of it broke apart population wise. So
Wow.
yeah, because today also I think Pakistan's population is what, 18 crores or something like that. Pakistan's is 20 crores.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, 22 crores.
yeah, so it was almost the same population at that time also, and it broke apart, and it was like a big blow to the Pakistanis. I mean, and that was, I think, that one of their lowest points in the history of Pakistan, and it really did two things, and one of them was very positive actually for them. One was the psychological hit that they got from India, and they realized was that they cannot win a conventional war against India.
Right.
This they realized in 1971, and this shaped.
And they calibrated the ratio.
Yeah, it was the opposite now. 10 Indians are equal. One Indian is equal to 10 Pakistanis.
10 Pakistan.
So which shows later in their foreign policy of how they fought asymmetric war afterwards with India. So they realized that no more conventional wars with India because we can't win. Okay. Second thing, actually there are three things that they realized. Second thing which is beneficial to them was that a lot of people in Pakistan were actually happy that Bangladesh was gone. They were more troubled and more upset about the fact that they had to surrender, but they were actually not that upset that Bangladesh went, because that always seen them as inferior beings, sort of. They would always feel that we are these, Gora, Chitta, like 6 feet, Bengal, Punjabis and Pathans and stuff like that. Whereas these Bengalis, they're like these short, dark people and all. So they had always had these racist mindset and tendencies. So a lot of them were actually happy to see that, they off our backs, we don't care. At least that's what they told to themselves. And now they were like a consolidated one piece of land that they knew was Pakistan. This is us,
Right.
This is it. We have to do everything with a new resolve to never let something like this happen ever again. And to their credit, they've actually been quite successful at it since the 1970s. The third thing that happened was which is adjoining to the first bit about the conventional war that they knew they couldn't win, they decided to make the atom bomb. That became their sole purpose in life. One of their biggest purposes in life is that we have to create an atom bomb so that India cannot do to us again what they did back then. And famously, Bhutto had said at that time that we will eat grass, but we will make the atom bomb. Like, we don't care how much money we spend, how much we ruin ourselves, but we will make an atom bomb. We will eat grass, but we will make an atom bomb, and we will fight with you. We will fight a 1,000-year war with you.
That's a big commitment coming from a non-vegetarian.
from a guy who was.
What did you say? We'll fight a
1,000-year war.
1,000 years.
Yeah, we'll fight a 1,000-year war. I'm glad they had that much confidence in us also, that they'll have to fight us for 1,000 years to win.
Especially after being broken down in 24 years.
Yeah, and that jump really went from one Muslim is equal to 10 Hindus to we'll have to fight with you for 1,000 years to win. So, but it did. And so the atom bomb became really, really a pertinent issue, especially when India conducted its own nuclear tests in 1974. Though we didn't weaponize our own nuclear power, alarm bells had started ringing in Pakistan as early as 74, and they were hell-bent on making their own bomb, and they started approaching the Chinese and the Koreans. And
we did a test in which year again?
74.
And we developed this indigenously on our own?
Yeah, we did.
Or did we have help?
No, we didn't have any help. We did it indigenously, and but first we didn't have that much influence in the world to declare ourselves as a nuclear state and have no reaction. Remember, this is also the time when all this green revolution, white revolution is happening. We're dependent on food for food on a lot of countries and all of that.
Right.
So that sort of puts a speed breaker on our scientific advancement as well. And so we conduct a nuclear test, but we say that this is for nuclear energy, it's for peaceful use and not for weaponization. And we don't create those weapons till 1999 when the when the Pokhran tests happen. So we do this in 74, and this only confirms what Bhutto wanted since 71. And he basically, and when East Pakistan is lost, basically Yahya Khan is comes under the bus, and Bhutto, who has sort of been he's been the external affairs minister, the foreign minister in Yahya's cabinet basically, and he has argued at UN and everything. So he comes into prominence as someone who went to UN and put up a brave face, and he delivered a speech at UN and everything, very emotional and everything. So he was very popular. He had been sort of coached by Ayub Khan. He had been handpicked by Ayub Khan and sort of coached. So he was already the blue-eyed boy of the military. Much like what we will realize later on are these people who always prop up as these blue-eyed boys of the military, including later Nawaz Sharif and now Imran Khan. So they're all cultivated by these generals. So Bhutto was cultivated very nicely by Ayub Khan. He matured completely when it came to Yahya Khan, and Yahya Khan losing the 71 war as the head of the state basically meant that within 2 years he was also removed, put under house arrest, and Bhutto, a civilian, declared himself president, and he had the entire public after him. So in 1973, elections were held again in what was now Pakistan, the West Pakistan, and he won the elections and he became a prime minister again. Now,
so this was the second election.
Yeah. But this was actually the first parliamentary election. This was the first parliamentary election that came to fruition at the end of the day.
Right.
And he became sort of the first elected, I would say, prime minister of Pakistan in 1973. So if you go on Wikipedia and you say 1973, if you check before 1970, the previous elections in those areas have happened in 1939 or whatever, the provincial election. There was no parliamentary election till 1970. What also happens
People are just not used to democracy.
Yeah. But there isn't a really societal precedent of democracy in either India or Pakistan. In India, it's very carefully cultivated. over the years, which is why we have such a robust democracy right now. Uh, and it hasn't seen, a break from democracy. Unlike Pakistan, where this culture was sort of not cultivated, and this sort of Islamic warrior. There's a very good, to come back on that earlier point, there's a very good book, uh, or a very good article by Hussein Haqqani, who's a former diplomat of Pakistan, who wrote this about the legend of the Islamic warrior in Islamic societies, where
Mm.
warriors receive this really special. Again, I would probably link that article. It's too long to explain here, and which explains sort of the obsession with the military for Pakistanis. But basically, this was the first time that a politician, civilian politician, had become prime minister with such an overwhelming with had officially assumed the position of prime minister with such an overwhelming mandate, and he introduced a new constitution in Pakistan. So the first constitution had been in 1953, I think, and after that, this was a new constitution that had come up in 1973, and he had a quite a good reign for 4 years. But in that 4 years, there were a couple of charges against him of corruption and also of some political murders. I haven't read too much on it, and so there was some sections of society had a growing discontent against him. And then eventually in 1977, the then Chief of Army Staff, General Ziaul Haq, did another military coup and sort of overthrew Bhutto. So this is the third military coup in the history of Pakistan in 30 years. And funny thing is, Bhutto had handpicked Ziaul Haq because Ziaul Haq had a reputation of not being too political or being too politically inclined. But he ended up doing a coup on Bhutto, and there was a sham trial, and basically Bhutto was hung. And he was like, imagine that a former prime minister is hanged to death in a
Wow.
country that is like supposed to be a civilized nation. I mean, I can't even think of something like that in India. It's just unbelievable. But yeah, he hung Bhutto, and the world was watching, and no one could do anything about that. And so yeah, Zia said that he wasn't there to be a dictator, and that as soon as political stability would return to Pakistan, he would conduct free and fair election. But of course, that never happened. And Ziaul Haq declared himself president, and he had a long reign from 1977 to 1989.